You are alone in a room you worked very hard to afford. The silence is no longer peaceful, it has weight. You scroll through images of friends, of acquaintances, of past lovers, curated galleries of lives that seem to have coalesced into something tangible, a family, a shared history, a home that is more than an asset, and a question begins to form, not in your mind, but deeper in the pit of your being. A slow, cold, dawning question: was the trade worth it? You were told to optimize. You were told to prioritize the self, the career, the independence, the curated life of experiences. You were applauded for saying no to what was framed as archaic, burdensome, limiting. The timeline was a social construct. The biological clock was a patriarchy's alarm. You mastered your domain. And yet, the domain feels empty. This is not a fleeting sadness. It is the slow ache of a potential that was not actualized. It is the shadow of a path not taken, now grown tall and dark. The regret is not for what was done, but for what was forsaken in the name of a freedom that, in the end, can feel suspiciously like a cage of one's own making. Why does this ache feel so primordial, so deep that no promotion, no vacation, no perfectly styled lifestyle can soothe it? In this video, we will dissect the great modern regret, the systematic postponement, and often the voluntary abandonment of family and motherhood in the pursuit of an optimized, independent life. We are not here to judge. We are here to analyze the collision between a billion-year-old biological imperative and a 60-year-old social experiment. To understand the depth of this regret, you must first strip away the fairy tales, both the old fairy tale of mere romance and the new fairy tale of pure, unfettered individualism. You must look to the bedrock, the substrate, the code. For the female of the human species, biology is not a suggestion, it is a tyrannical investment. The asymmetry is total. A man's fundamental biological act requires minutes. A woman's requires years, 9 months of gestation, years of lactation, and more than a decade of intense provisioning and protection to bring a child to even marginal viability. This is not a political point. It is a zoological fact. Therefore, the female psychological architecture was forged in the fire of this monumental burden. It is engineered for selectivity. This is the engine of what is coldly termed hypergamy, the instinct to seek not just a mate, but a provider of resources, protection, and above all, commitment. It is the drive to secure man for whom the act of fatherhood is more than a momentary impulse, but a sustained covenant. Her survival and the survival of her offspring depended on this discernment. This is the first archetype at play, the mother, whose creativity is not abstract. It is flesh and blood. It is the future made manifest. Conversely, the male biological imperative is to disperse seed, but his paradox is that to ensure his seed survives, he must also commit, provide, and protect. He is selected for his utility as a tool for survival. The archetype here is the father, the protector, the pillar, the foundation upon which the mother's creation is built. These are not roles. They are destinies written into our nervous systems over millions of years. The deep, satisfying fulfillment, what Jung might call the integration of the feminine principle, came from the brutal, beautiful responsibility of participating in this continuum, to nurture life within oneself and then to shepherd it into the world within the protective alliance with a committed partner. This was the central drama of human existence. It was dangerous, all-consuming, and it was meaningful. The regret you feel is not a social failing. It is a biological signal, a signal that a fundamental circuit in the psyche, a circuit demanding the fulfillment of this creative, protective, bonding destiny, is firing into a void. It is the howl of an instinct that has been sophisticatedly lied to, told its purpose is optional, even oppressive. But the body knows, the shadow self knows, and it is starting to send the bill. So we arrive at the great dissonance, the trap, The human psyche, a masterpiece of Pleistocene engineering, has been dropped into the 21st century digital panopticon, and every modern institution is aligned to exploit the resulting fracture. First, the marketplace. You were told to become the provider, to optimize your earning potential, to build your personal brand, to see your life as a CV. This is not liberation, it is the co-option of the masculine imperative. The career ladder promises a sense of competence, of value, and for a time it delivers. But it is a cruel mimicry. It offers growth, but not the growth of a living being you created. It offers deadlines, but not the primordial deadline of fertility. The corporation is a savage surrogate family that will never love you back. It demands your vital energy, the very energy meant for kin, and in return gives you a title and a depreciating currency. You master the logos of your field, but the eros of your biological purpose goes starved. Then, the mating bazaar. Enter the illusion of infinite choice, the dating app. This is where hypergamy, that ancient selective instinct, is weaponized into a pathology. The biological impulse to seek the best possible mate is funneled into a marketplace where you are both the shopper and the product, scrolling through a catalog of humanity. It creates the paralyzing fantasy of the perfect partner just one more swipe away. It elevates superficial signaling, status, aesthetics, wit, over the bedrock virtues of character, loyalty, and sacrificial capability. You are selecting for a profile, not for a protector. You are training your deepest instincts to seek the optimal experience, not the viable foundation. This system conspires to keep you in a state of perpetual, profitable adolescence. It sells you the romance of the eternal maiden archetype, unbound, exploring, consuming experiences. It demonizes the mother as a symbol of burdensome sacrifice. Society now worships at the altar of potential, not actualization. It is far more profitable to have you as a consuming unit, free of dependence, chasing the next hit of validation, travel, or professional accolade, than as a cornerstone of a stable, self-sufficient family unit that withdraws from the consumption cycle to focus on its own internal world. The most insidious manipulation is the reframing of the biological imperative itself. The deep, hardwired longing for family is pathologized, called a social conditioning or a fear of missing out. The ticking clock is dismissed as patriarchal propaganda. So you override the signal. You silence the instinct with reason, with ideology, with another glass of wine, another work project, another curated holiday. You are told you are choosing yourself, while the system empties you out and sells you the refill. This is the modern condition, to have the biology of an ancestral creature with the consciousness of a modern individual trapped in systems designed to exploit the gap between the two. The regret is the inevitable result. It is the bill coming due for living a life in direct contradiction to your foundational programming. The soul, in the Jungian sense, craves its own completion. It craves responsibility, sacrifice for a real future, deep bonding, not just bonding through shared consumption. Deny it that, and the shadow grows. It appears as a profound, inarticulate grief for a self you were meant to become, but were talked out of. So here is the uncomfortable truth, stripped of all sentiment. You have been sold a narrative of empowerment that systematically alienates you from the very sources of deep, enduring power, the power of creation, the power of lineage, the power of a shared sacrificial struggle that forges meaning in the bones. You traded the tangible, arduous, and sacred for the abstract, convenient, and profane, and the psyche is now presenting its invoice. The freedom you were promised is, for many, revealing itself as a terrifying form of weightlessness, a freedom from, not a freedom to. And nature abhors a vacuum. Into that void rushes anxiety, a cyclical pursuit of pleasure that feels increasingly hollow, and that slow, burning regret, the recognition that you optimized for the wrong variables. This is not a call to abandon ambition, nor to retreat to some imagined past. That is not only impossible, it is cowardly. It is, however, a demand for a ruthless accounting. A Stoic piece of advice: you must practice a form of amor fati, the love of your fate, but it must begin with clear-eyed vision. Look at your life not as a story you've been told, but as a biological and psychological entity within an unfolding time. You have constraints. The most fundamental is time itself. You have a nature. It is not infinitely malleable. To defy it is to invite suffering. Ask yourself with stone-cold honesty, what hierarchy of values have I actually been serving? The value of comfort, of approval, of transient achievement? Have I confused independence with isolation and choice with avoidance? If the regret is present, it is a signal. It is a part of you that has not been spoken to, integrated, or honored. It is the voice of an archetype demanding its due. To integrate it does not necessarily mean a mad scramble towards traditionalism. That ship may have sailed for some, and the modern world offers no simple return. But it does mean you must redirect your creative capacity towards something real. Perhaps it means reconceiving family, fostering, mentorship, or building community structures that are not mere networks for gain, but vessels for mutual responsibility. Perhaps it means choosing a partner not as an accessory to your curated life, but as a fellow architect of a fortress against chaos, with children as the living stone of its walls. It means seeking meaning over happiness, duty over freedom, reality over illusion. You were sold a story that you could have it all by having the self at the center. It was a lie. The center cannot hold. The true center is the responsibility you bear for something beyond yourself. The path forward is not one of blame, but of burden. Pick up the real burden, the one your biology and your soul have been calling you to carry all along. It is heavy, it is limiting, it is full of sacrifice, and it is the only thing that will make the weight of your own life feel light.